Okay, let's talk about selection tools. Selection tools are found over here in the top of your toolbar. The top one here is called the marquee selection tool. And like with any other tool, when you select it, you should always check out its options at the top to make sure that they're set the way you want them. The way that the marquee selection tool works, you go over into your image, you click and drag, and it creates a square or rectangle based on what you drag. Now the beauty of a selection is that now anything inside the selection will be affected by anything that I do, and anything outside the selection will be protected or not have any changes. So for instance, if I take a paintbrush with some black paint and I try to paint across this image, see, nothing happens out here, but as I go into the image, black paint appears. So that's all a selection really does for you. But that's very powerful. To undo a selection, you're going to use the keyboard shortcut Apple D, or you could go the long way and go to Select, Deselect. Hidden underneath the marquee selection tool is the elliptical marquee tool, which you can use to draw ellipses. If you need to create a perfect circle, then you can hold the shift key down and drag, and it'll constrain you to a perfect circle. That's also true of the regular marquee. The rectangular marquee, if you hold the shift key, it'll constrain you to a square. Below those guys are the lasso tools. So you've got the regular lasso tool, which allows you to click and drag almost like drawing. So you're going to draw around your selection or the object that you want to select, and depending on whether or not you're good at drawing with a mouse or pen stylus, whatever you're using, then that will depend on how good your selection is. When you're using the lasso, you have to hold the button down the whole time. If you release, then what happens is that the Photoshop will try to close the selection for you. So when I let go, it's going to automatically go to where I started and close that selection. So not a great selection, but still a very useful tool. So I'm going to undo that. Below that guy, I have the polygonal lasso tool, which works similar to the lasso, except that you click, drag, click, and every time you click, you sort of put an anchor point down, and you draw around the object that way. If you need to back up, you sort of back the mouse up and hit the delete key, and it'll allow you to back up. Now you have to complete this tool as well. You have to complete it, you have to go back and find the original starting point, or if you hold the command key, the Apple key, and click again, then it will close the selection for you and create the selection. It works great for things that have hard corners and sharp edges, but not real great for this organic giraffe. The final lasso tool is the magnetic lasso tool, and what that guy's going to do is try and help you draw. Much like the original lasso, you drag it along, but it's also going to look for variations in color and tone to look for edges to try and help you draw. So I'm going to click and drag. You can see it's sort of magnetizing itself over to the edge of this giraffe and helping me try to draw. Now it'll put points down along the way on its own, or you can force it to put a point down by clicking with your mouse. So I'm just dragging around the outside of the giraffe here. And again, if I need to back up, if I hit the delete key and back the mouse up, I can go back, just like with the polygonal lasso tool. So I'm just going to continue around here, and oops, when I get to the end here, again I have to complete the tool by either finding the original starting point or using that command click to complete the selection. So very useful selection tool. Below that, I have the Magic Wand and Quick Select tool. The Magic Wand is a tool that selects by color. If you look up here in the tolerance section, you'll see that the tolerance is by default set to 32, meaning 32 variations of the color that you click on. So if I click on this brown in his neck, it's going to select 32 variations of the brown that I clicked on. So if I'm trying to select the giraffe, that's probably not a great way to go about it. Now you can add to selection, and this will work for any selection tool, but if I have a selection made and I want to add to that selection, then all I have to do is hold down the Shift key while I'm continuing to select, and I can add more to that selection. So that's how the magic wand works. Now you should keep in mind though that sometimes when you're trying to select something like this giraffe, often it's much easier to select what you don't want. For instance, the white background here is all one color. So if I click out here with my magic wand, it very easily selects that background. So if I want the giraffe selected now, then I just have to go to Select menu and Inverse. And that will reverse the selection from the background to the giraffe. One final selection tool to talk about here is the Quick Selection tool. That's the newest one. And it works sort of like the magic wand and sort of like the lasso combined together. You just sort of click and drag and it will kind of grab based on what you're dragging it over and the color tones and variations. So oftentimes that's a very good tool to use, sometimes not so much. If you want to subtract from a selection, like I got a little bit too much of the background here next to his head, then I want to use the Option key for that. So if I go, and you can switch tools when you're holding the Shift to add and the Option key to subtract. So I'll just go over to my regular lasso tool, holding down the Option key now, and I can subtract by drawing around that little piece that I didn't want there. If I hold the Shift key, then I can come down here and I can add in this bit that I missed down the bottom. Okay, so Shift to add, Option to subtract, and those are your selection tools.